Hello everyone, this is Pal Ponder on Weather. In this update, we've got several more days of severe weather as this trough moves across from west to east, followed by a rapid warm-up on the backside. Then this pretty significant trough dives into the Pacific Northwest, bringing much cooler conditions for them. And yes, even more snow comes back into play. Welcome back everyone. How's it going out there? This is your Thursday, May the 5th update. Man, we got a lot to talk about. I appreciate everyone tuning in to my live coverage last night, covering all the storms out there in Texas and Oklahoma. Unfortunately, we did have several tornadoes that came out of there, and then we got numerous flash flooding concerns into the overnight hours, especially into Oklahoma, with almost a foot of rain that fell. But we have a lot to talk about, so if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the overall setup for today, because the Storm Prediction Center has yet another enhanced risk for severe weather as this pushes across into East Texas, and that's where the enhanced risk is, over portions of East Texas, getting into northern portions of Louisiana, as well as into Arkansas. But that slight risk extends all the way down into central Texas, goes all the way into portions of Mississippi here, western Tennessee, and southern Illinois. But definitely don't let your guard down, even into the marginal risk zone, as these storms can get pretty nasty with the developing squall line, especially as we get into the afternoon hours, into the late afternoon, into the early evening time frame. But yeah, the tornado threat is going to be a little high this afternoon. Not as definitely high as it was yesterday, but we still have a 5% chance in place this afternoon going into East Texas, as the atmosphere is still going to be rotating. So the main concern today will be your damaging winds, your larger hail, and then you have an isolated tornado threat into eastern Texas, down here into portions of central Texas, as well as northern portions of Louisiana. Pretty much the entire state of Arkansas has a tornado risk today. It extending into western Tennessee and parts of western Kentucky here. But as we get into the day tomorrow, that will continue to push off across the east, now setting up over portions of the southeast as well as off the east coast, with those marginal and slight risk in over portions of Alabama, as well as Georgia here into the Carolinas, getting up to parts of Virginia, with that marginal risk extending all the way north into West Virginia and parts of the Ohio Valley here. But as we get into your, kind of your Saturday time frame, things do start to wind down. Now we're talking just kind of general thunderstorms in this area off the East Coast into Florida. But we do have a little bit of an instability that's trying to develop in the midsection of the country, back here into portions of Nebraska, as well as into South Dakota on your Saturday time frame, May the 7th. So let's take a look at the overall setup last night, because this is up into the overnight hours, about 2 o'clock in the morning. That's when they had all the dangerous flash flooding that really set up over portions of Oklahoma here, with some of these isolated reports up to a foot of rain. And in fact, it's actually still raining this morning. So if we take you through time, I mean, this is the current radar about 7 o'clock. It's still raining into portions of eastern Oklahoma, getting into Missouri here, heading up into Illinois. That rain will continue to push across, waiting on the backside of this cold front. We could be seeing a broken line of storms in and across North Texas, getting into kind of your late morning time frame. And that heavier band will start to congeal together into portions of Arkansas, getting into portions of Missouri, heading up to Illinois. At the same time, we've got that pretty significant trough that's going to be diving into the Pacific Northwest, bringing more rain and even some snow in the upper elevations for that region, as ahead of the cold front and the warm sector, right, basically southeast of the Metroplex. I think the squall line is going to be forming into more of a congealed linear line by then, with these storms really starting to get its act together by about noon time frame, just south of the DFW Metroplex. And it really deepens those reds out there in East Texas. So that's where the concern for that enhanced risk comes into play, with those damaging winds, that larger hail, and that isolated tornado threat will push into East Texas, into the Arkansas area. But on the backside, we do have that surface low still over portions of Kansas, kind of wringing its moisture out over parts, finally ending in parts of Oklahoma. But yes, by about that 6 o'clock time frame tonight, that will continue to push across into southeast Texas there, getting into the northern parts of, say, the Houston Metroplex. Pretty much the entire state of Arkansas is going to be covered with those storm threat into the afternoon hours. But as we switch into, say, that 10 o'clock time frame this evening, that storm threat will be over the Houston Metroplex by then, heading over portions of Shreveport, extending into portions of, say, the Baton Rouge area, then getting into the, say, the New Orleans area by the time we get into the overnight hours, with the northern branch kind of wringing its moisture out into parts of Missouri, and then heading into Kentucky by then. But as we move through time and kind of take you through your overall setup as we get into your Friday morning, there's that northern branch that fishtails into the Ohio Valley and the parts of the mid-Atlantic states, getting into Pennsylvania, into New Jersey, heading into portions of, say, New York City, into Jersey there, as that continues to push across into parts of the southeast, with those heavier rains trying to build again, with that slight risk for severe weather, into Friday with that daytime heating. So you can stop the clock right around 2-3 o'clock, and right there over, a good chunk of, Georgia, into eastern parts of Tennessee, going into Kentucky by then, over the Ohio Valley with some heavier rains moving in, and then heading up into West Virginia, getting into Pennsylvania, southern portions of New York here, and that'll get into parts of Jersey into the afternoon hours, with the severe threat on the southern side of that storm. Then as we'll continue through the afternoon hours, getting into your evening time frame on Friday, that will continue to push across into the Carolinas with some of those heavier storm activity. And by the time we get into the overnight hours on Saturday, that will continue to push through the Delmarva Peninsula, headed into Jersey with those heavier rain showers into your overnight kind of Friday time frame. But let's take a look at the overall setup on the backside, because by the time we get into Saturday, the news is going to be all over kind of your rapid surge with a massive ridge, the strongest ridge we've seen so far this year. This is your 850 millibar temperatures. This is about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. This is kind of what you look at this time of year. It kind of tells you, hey, what's happening in the upper levels and what could take place on the surface. Because in the upper levels, 5,000 feet up, it's going to be plenty warm. And then we have a lot of sinking air by then, and that will sink down to the surface. So let's take a look at these 850 millibar temperatures as we walk you through time on Saturday, as that trough will continue to push across into the East Coast. You see these blues here, that's the indication of the cooler conditions underneath that trough. That's where the rain showers are going to be. But there, the darker reds and all the kind of the white showing up, that's the indication of some well above average temperatures soaring into Texas. We're talking record high temperatures potentially. The first 100ths of the season for many out here in West Texas. 106 degrees is no question doable by the time we get into Saturday, and that surge will extend all the way into the midsection of the country and head all the way into Canada, with that significant trough that's going to be diving in off the Pacific Northwest. So as we walk you through the weekend, that ridge just expands and builds over Mother's Day. So Mother's Day is going to be a warm day for many, especially down here to the south and to Texas, while it's much colder into parts of the Pacific Northwest, getting into Northern California with those well below average temperature anomalies. And then there you see that trough off the East Coast. But the midsection of the country is just going to be exploding with well above average temperatures that get extending all the way into Missouri, back into Nebraska by then. By the time we get into Monday and your Tuesday, we could be looking at, widespread 80s, if not almost 90. Yes, I said 90 degrees by the time we get into Tuesday for places into Minnesota. So that is by far the rapid warm up, the well above average temperatures we've seen so far this season. And there's just completely the opposite off the West Coast there in California, with that pretty significant trough bringing much cooler conditions for them. And that just expands and really starts to build. And as it builds into your, say Tuesday, say Wednesday timeframe, that's a pretty significant developing that's happening. This is what's referred to as a Rex blocking pattern, with this ridge over the top that tends to lower the pressures underneath, and we could be looking at a little surface low trying to develop off the Carolina coast here, and that will block it from heading northward. And if it just hangs over water, yeah, we're talking about it could be some, maybe possibly a subtropical storm trying to develop in that region. I know it's May, but hey, we've had the last 7 years with an early named storm before the official start date of the hurricane season, June 1st. So it's not out of the question. That's not going to happen again this year, especially with the La Nina still into play. So we're going to be watching this feature as we extend into, the middle of next week. By the end of next week, the longer it hangs over water, the more time frame it's able to build, and that ridge is going to be over the top for a while. I mean, you can see it really starts to build, and this will actually push it further south, maybe heading back into Florida by the time we get into your Friday time frame. So we'll be watching this system fairly closely. But yeah, it's going to be pretty significant rapid surge of warm temperatures. But here's your surface map. Let's take a look at some of those temperatures and the temperature anomalies, what's actually going to happen at the surface now. And all these reds here, you can follow the graph at the bottom corner of the screen here, with these 5, 10, 15, 20 degrees above average temperatures, with all the areas in red, and just about 5, possibly 10 degrees with the green areas of below average temperatures, what you would typically see this time of year. But yeah, the story is by Saturday, that record warmth into Texas extends all the way into the midsection of the country, going all the way into Canada, with those 2 troughs on the either side of the coastlines there with those below average temperatures. But the midsection of the country is plenty warm by the time we get into Tuesday, time frame extending all the way to Wisconsin, Minnesota, into, portions of Canada there. And then just completely opposite off the west coast there, with those well below average temperature anomalies. We could have some instability trying to reach the midsection of the country by the time we get, say, the Wednesday into Thursday timeframe, with all the record heat that we're going to be dealing with for much, especially in the early part of the week. We could be looking at maybe possibly some more severe storms by the time we get into the middle of the next week, but we got a lot of time to watch that. So let's take a look at the setup over the next 7 days on the surface map for the precipitation, because we do have that precipitation by Saturday that's going to be starting to ring itself out over portions of the Northeast, getting into Jersey area. But for the rest of the country, under that ridge of high pressure, you see all the whites there. That's nothing, right? That's a lot of sinking air, no rain underneath those clouds with that ridge of high pressure. So we're going to be entering a calmer period, especially with this weekend heading into at least the first part of early next week, as things do start to calm down. And a lot of you guys experience some fairly decent, nice weather, but you're going to be dealing with some of those higher temperatures. And yeah, it's time to open the pools, guys, because it's going to be plenty warm for pool season for a good chunk of the country. And that you can see by your Thursday time frame, it's cold enough underneath that trough in the Pacific Northwest. They're still dealing with those well below average temperatures, and it's going to be cold enough to, again, snow, especially in the upper regions up there. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.